Welcome to Diceborn. Good morning.
Oh, you need to mute your own stream, Matt.
Yeah, that I do. Hey guys, we are professionals. Coming at you from the Diceborn pre-show. I'm Matt, the narrator of Diceborn, and joining me is Eric.
Hi, I'm here because I'm streaming. Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And also joining me is Grace.
Hello, and I am here to talk about my unseen character.
I know, you did so
Sesily.
much work. It's so
Yeah.
good. Also,
Someone
Matt,
in
are
the
you
chat
not wearing
said we-
headphones? Really?
I could put headphones on.
I'm just surprised, is all. I'm just surprised.
Someone in the chat just said we rolled a 1 on that intro.
Very good. But it's fine. I was just surprised to hear it go through your computer, Matt. That's all.
I know.
Anywho.
So we're gonna do a full cast stream in a little bit, but before that, we wanted to have Grace on since Grace prepared this awesome character, Cecily, who was connected to all of the player characters and many of the major NPCs, but then wasn't able to actually play in the game. And so yeah, we wanted to chat about her character a bit. So while I get my headphones on, Grace, why don't you tell us a bit about Cecily and where the idea came from?
So, Cecily was an older woman who was a widow and a spy master for the Alarials. She was a Sylvain's aunt by marriage. So I think the idea kind of came from, I think, Matt, when you were telling us about this show originally, you kind of did touch on, Regency and, Bridgerton as one of the touch point, inspirations. And so I kind of latched onto that, and one of my favorite sort of character archetypes from that genre is, the widowed older woman who likes playing matchmaker with the young children and meddles in their affairs. And so that's sort of where Cecily came from. and then from there, I think it's a very natural segue to be but also in the Final Empire, she's literally a spy who has contacts all over and likes meddling in the affairs of the entire noble houses.
Yeah, she's the Lady Danbury mixed with Varys from Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Kind of is how I thought of her a little bit. Yeah. And so yeah, I guess one of the things with Cecily, I think, as the narrator going in, that I was a little not nervous about, but I wanted to be intentional about, was because she was so much older than the rest of the cast, I really wanted to make sure she was connected. So we did a lot of backstory development, especially to the main cast's parents. Is that where we want to start? I don't know.
Yeah. Do we just want to give? I can just give the full Cecily backstory spiel, and then we can pick it apart, kind of. I guess.
Let's do that. That's
Hell
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cecily. So when she was she was a kind of obscure, distant cousin of the Alarials from a minor branch. She wasn't the oldest daughter. She was kind of a younger daughter. She was born with she has the ability to burn copper. So kind of when she hit her debut years, she was taken in by the main Alarial branch, and Lady Dianet, who was head of house, as a ward. So she went to Luthadel, and her position was kind of as training to be a sort of lady-in-waiting figure to Patrine, a kind of trusted companion who, would be with her at court and help her out, but also could use her copper to protect her from some amount of allomancy. And also, Lady Dianet at that point already had kind of picked up on some of Patrine's personality and asked was having Cecily like keep an eye on Patrine to make sure she didn't get into too much trouble that would go against the family.
Oh, full series spoilers, by the way.
Oh.
So we should say
Full
that.
series spoilers for Diceborn Secrets in Stained Glass. There's 4 episodes. If you haven't watched those yet, watch
There's
those.
4 episodes?
There's 5 episodes. There's 5 episodes that you should watch. Diceborn Secrets in Stained Glass.
Anyway, please continue.
Yeah. Also, we have a talkback show out.
That's true.
So if you're watching this live, you can keep watching this live. But if you're watching this not live, you might want to watch the talkback first, because we might mention some stuff from there too. Anyway.
Okay.
Please continue.
So, you know, when Cecily and Patrine first met, they weren't like super close friends. Patrine had this like little trio of friends with Fredrian and what's her name? Sonora?
Yeah, and so just because you know, maybe people don't have the family trees in front of them. Patrine is Jenna's mother. Sonara is Lucius's mother, and Fedrian is Gier's mother. So we kind of have a previous thing going on. Yeah.
Offer is asking how old is Sesily compared to Patrine?
I feel like Cecily is,
I think she was younger.
I think, yeah, she was. The Sesily timeline was always weird because it was always sort of like slotted in, and I think my initial imagining of Cecily was younger than like it would make sense for her to be in terms of other characters' ages. I do think she's younger than. I think she was like either of an age or maybe like a year or two younger than Cassian.
How well? So I have it in front of me now, but I'm gonna let you canonize Cecily's age right now, and then I'll tell you where she is in relation to Patrine. You don't have to be married to it, but I just don't want to say what I have in my notes and then have it be wrong.
I think it was around like 59 or 60 maybe in terms of when the main cast was. I think was what we landed on.
Yeah. So you're around Cassian's age. So Cassian is Mavis's father, the third Ilariel sibling from that generation. It goes Solace, Patrine, and then there's a bit of an age gap, Cassian. And so Sesily was kind of to Patrine what Addison was pretending to be to Mavis. In some ways.
So good.
Yeah, and we talked about like the dynamic of the 4 of them kind of being a little bit like, if anyone's seen Mean Girls, like the sort of like Regina George trio, and like the way Katie is sort of like eventually pulled into their group, but after some like mean girling and like a little bit of like changing herself to fit in. And then at that point, you know, after Cecily had been accepted and sort of brought into this inner circle, Patrine tells Cecily that she is planning a coup against Solace to become heir of the Ilariel household. And then at that point, Cecily goes and snitches on her to Dionette, and is like, "Hey, what do you want me to do about this?" And Dionette is like, "I'll take care of it." And at that point, Dionette marries Patrine off to the Tacules. And Patrine finds out that Cecily was the reason and is very angry at her, and they have their falling out. And so at some point after that, Rhys Hadriel, who is the heir of the Hadriel household at that point, comes to Luthadel with his father looking for alliances, trade agreements, and also a wife. And Dionette sort of facilitates the marriage between Cecily and Rhys. And she goes off to be, Lady Hadriel. And I think at that point, at the time of the marriage, Rhys's younger brother, Bellamy, was already married to his wife, Esme. And I think Raethys had already been, I think they're married. I don't know if Raethys had already been born at that point. Maybe, I think so, based off Raethys' age. But yeah, so Cecily goes off and like lives as Lady Hadriel for a while. There is some like tension because Bellamy, who is Sylvain's father, doesn't really like or trust Cecily for a while. He kind of recognizes that, hey, she's maybe a little bit shady. She's from like the capital where they have these beliefs and stuff that we don't fully agree with. And Cecily at that point sort of starts her setting up her like real spy network is during her time with the Hadriels is when she sort of becomes a spy master. And she and Reese are unable to have children, so eventually Rathis sort of becomes their heir. And then eventually the fire comes around and Reese and Julian go to the fire and die in the fire. And Cecily Cecily decides to like leave the Hadriel estate to leave Rathis in charge by himself and take Sylvain to the capital to where the events of the story happen.
Yeah, no, and it was interesting. I might have mentioned this on the talkback briefly, but since you're here now, Grace, I know I plotted out a lot of the stuff with the senior Ilarials with Cecily in mind. Like, so it was interesting when when Cecily wasn't there all of a sudden, because, all of a sudden Petrine was really only significant to Jenna. Like, I had planned Petrine as kind of one of the major villains. And she was very significant to two of the PCs. And Cecily was very prepared to speedrun the mystery element. But so yeah, it was interesting retooling things, but I was glad that Jenna, Eric, still engaged with some of those older characters like Lady Urbane and Lady Tekiel and Solace.
It never remains not funny to me that Jenna just goes through who is highest rank and just went down the list. Like, once you said that, hilarious. Though I do wish I got to chat with Sylvain, but that's fine. But we had to talk with Tennille, right? Tennille is so important. But yeah.
Speaking of Sylvain, Julian, Cecily's husband, died in the fire with Julian because he was there as Julian's mentor during the business proposal. So that was Cecily's kind of connection to the fire. All the players kind of had a connection. So I'm curious, how do you think Sesily would have reacted or felt as stuff started coming out about the fire? And maybe start with kind of what would have been her goals coming to the party, like to start? Like, what was her kind of plan?
So, I mean, her goals would have been, like, obviously find Sylvain a wife, a suitable match, which she does not think Addison would not have fit that match, but she would have disapproved of the Addison Sylvain thing. And then once that conversation with Solace happened, it would have been like solving the mystery. So Cecily is a very ambitious person. Like, that was like I think you guys have probably talked about like Jenna being ambitious and stuff, but ambitious was actually like the personality trait we put on Cecily's character sheet.
Okay.
So like this ties back into the fire, but like she wanted to be head of the entire Ilarial spy network, as it was when the like story started. It was just sort of her corner of the world where she had influence as a Hadriel. But once she got that like deal from Solace, she would have been all in on like, I need to succeed here. And also, sort of tying into that, let's talk about the fire a little bit, because this was actually Cecily's secret, like her personal secret was
Yes.
So Cecily, a lot of her spy network was made up of Scott because she sort of recognized, like, hey, these are people who go unnoticed, who sort of a lot of nobles like view them as animals, view them as like incapable of doing anything other than what they're told. But like I know that's not true, so she started recruiting Scott to be her spies, and that was like a lot of what her spy network was made up of. And specifically with her location, she was recruiting like the skilled Ska who were being trained by the Lunarchs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I'm not sure if we got into it too much in the show, actually, what Julian's business proposal was.
No, and we'll definitely need to talk about Julian in depth, also in the mainstream, but...
Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Julian, but the business proposal, my story for the Lunarches was that they trained kind of like specialist ska, kind of like the clubs of the ska that were with more developed skills, not just laborers. And the proposal was actually to completely revamp the Ilarial ska with a view to like it catching on with the other great houses, where like if you treat ska better, have better conditions, train them more, give them better skills, they'll actually be more productive. So it was like a kind of pro ska policy, but it was still kind of coming from a paternalistic, this is also going to make us more money, was how he was trying to sell it, which, of course, Reese and Julian were all for, but Vasha didn't like.
Yeah. So, Cecily, part of why they were there was because Cecily had been like pushing for Reese and Julian to make this business proposal as sort of a subtle way, like family dynamic power play to take over the Ilarial spy network entirely. Because if the Lunarchs were like in charge of the Ska entirely, then she could more easily get her spies in like the entire Final Empire and increase her like sphere of influence. And also, I don't think we ever talked like super extensively about this, but like Julian with his place as like Reese's, protege was actually, and like with this being his family business, was actually like somewhat aware of like Cecily's actions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly like how much he was like Julian. I feel like Matt has kind of kept close to his chest in some ways, but
yes, everyone wants to know about Julian, including me and Ian.
What about Julian?
Oh, go die! No.
Yeah, so he was actually like the Knight of the Fire, aware of sort of that ulterior motive for being there, from Cecily.
Yeah. And so I guess how would Cecily, like, do you think Cecily would have gravitated towards Petrine as the culprit, either like having responsibility in the fire or after the threat on Mavis's life, like, do you think she would have kind of glommed onto Petrine right away, or were there? Because I know the rest of the cast kind of got really distracted by Straff and was really fixated on what Straff was doing, which makes sense because we had two Ventures in play, right? But yeah, do you think Cecily would have kind of followed similar lines to the group, or would she have?
That's very hard to say, I think. Well, because like I didn't necessarily pick up on Petrine, but you said like a lot of the Petrine foreshadowing was stuff in game that I didn't like know when all of this was unfolding. So it's hard to say if I/Cecily would have picked up on those things and been like, it's Petrine.
I guess another question then. so like we talked about Jenna's like task list, and Eric always came to the sessions with like an agenda of what Jenna wanted to do.
That is true.
Yes.
So let's say Cecily was in the game. She goes to the meeting with Solace. He tells her, "This is my task for you," the task he gave to Sylvain. What's Cecily's at least starting agenda? Because I get how with all the moving pieces, it's tough to look too far ahead. But like from that moment on, who is she wanting to talk to first? Who is she wanting to check in with? What's her plan for kind of episode 1, maybe episode 2?
Sorry, just what can you just remind me what exactly Solace says to Sylvain? I know it's like related to the Burns Man.
Yeah. So
how much
the information the Illyrials have is that there's someone looking to hire an assassin to do something against the Illyrials. And then he also learns about this burned man assassin. And so the concern is if the buyer contacts the assassin who might have had something to do with the fire already, that's like a match made in phrase for the Illyrials to be in trouble. So he's asking her to either find the employer or to find the assassin or both, and try to suss that out. And in the party, he acknowledges this might be a bit bigger job, and so he's just kind of saying, "You have a captive audience here. Like, get a start on the usual suspects and try to see what's going on."
Yeah, so I think maybe she starts by talking to people who were either at the fire or who were like close to someone who was at the fire, and starts like kind of fishing out maybe who would either know more than they're saying about that night, potentially to get information on if the burned man got burned at the fire, or alternatively if that was a recent big event that the Illyrials took part in, to see if maybe there's some motive there of like, was someone, is someone maybe is the reason that someone would want to kill the Illyrials connected to this fire? I mean, obviously the Illyrials are a great house and there's lots of reasons you might want to assassinate someone, so it might be like a long shot in her mind, but particularly with this being like the first event since the fire where it's like the same event, I think that's where she starts, probably.
Yeah. And so which character do you think she'd go to first? Like, because obviously, like, the PC, would it be a PC? The PCs all have a connection to the fire? Would it be one of the Illyria? Like, would it be Felix or Solace?
I do think she talks to Mavis pretty quickly in this scenario.
The sole survivor, that makes sense.
Yes.
Or the
duo
survivor? One of the dual survivors?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Nat 20, baby.
Yeah, other than Mavis, maybe she I don't know which venture would make sense. Probably not, honestly, probably not Dier and Eliane, but she might try to talk to like honestly, maybe Straff, because Straff's wife died, I think, in the fire, right?
Although Straff's not at the party.
Oh, he's not at the party?
No,
that would have been crazy. So. I was actually really worried about that before we started. If Straff
I don't know which venture would make sense to go to, but she might try to talk to one of the ventures about Ellen's mother dying in the fire to see if maybe there's some grudge there.
And this kind of ties into, so Gray in the chat has a question, or Gray Watch has a question about, we have the relationships with Sylvain. What was that maybe going to look like on screen, and how do you think Cecily would have interacted with the other four? So that kind of ties in nicely, like talking about Cecily's relationship with Dier that she might rely upon to get information. So do you want to give a sense of what her vibe is with the other characters? And we can see if I got it right in my relationship chart, because I have a relationship chart, but sometimes it's wrong.
It's been so long since session 0. I have no recollection of this whatsoever.
So I think Cecily, like, would have attempted to be a little bit of like a, you know, because we talked about like her maybe like since she was friends with their mothers, maybe like almost feeling a little bit of like guilt that both like that Dier lost his mother and that like Lucius's mother wasn't very present. And so there was an element of like we talked about her maybe attempting to be a little bit more of like maternal figure, probably not playing out super well for who either of those characters actually are. They probably would not have taken that super well, honestly. And I think like if that had happened, Cecily probably could have like shifted gears pretty quickly. Lucius, I think there's also an element of like a working relationship there, I think, because with his gossip, like he is someone that Cecily could also kind of go to for information.
Yeah. No, we figured there was kind of he might be one of her sources.
Yeah.
But I think we talked about how like Lucius doesn't like Lucius thinks Cecily is like grunt level.
Yeah.
Like not in terms of nobility, but in terms of like her role in the intelligence network.
Yes.
So he doesn't realize that she's actually quite high up. But yeah, we did talk that they chat.
Yeah. I think Cecily would maybe try to avoid Jenna at times because Jenna is Patrine's daughter, and Cecily suspects that Jenna would not react super well to her. Yeah.
Because Jenna doesn't know any of this stuff with Sesily and Patrine.
No.
Right, Matt?
No.
Yeah.
Like, Patrine might have said to Jenna, I don't think she would have explained why, but she might have been like, well, probably actually when Jenna started with Julian, and she knew Julian's connection to the Hadriels, she might have made like a snide comment about like, those Hadriels are snakes or something like, you know what I mean? Like,
Patrine's nice, guys. She's so nice.
She's so well. Yeah. Like we said, she's a mid 60s Regina George, who also is in the Final Empire, which makes it way worse.
Yeah. I think with both Dier and Lucius, there's an element of like they have so much potential and they're wasting it, like wanting them to like reach their full potential of like Dier's like, really good coin shot and like he, does all this stuff to like annoy people and push people away, but actually he could be like really successful if he wanted. And with Lucius, there's like, like he's already kind of got this like gossip network without really trying. Like, think of all the amazing things he could do if he actually like put his mind towards being like a real, mover and shaker in like the courts sort of thing. I mean, I don't think that necessarily she would have said that to either of them, but it might have played out in sort of how she interacted with them, sort of maybe at times pushing them a little bit more to try to do what she thinks is like reaching their potential and being a good, noble.
I have a question. So when Cecily, outed Patrine and then Patrine was married off, like, how did that friend group go from that moment? Was like Cecily still friends with Fedrian and Sinara, or did it like sort of break up? Like, how did that vibe go with the four of the moms?
The moms.
Well, Cecily's not a mom, but
yeah, go ahead.
I think at least from Cecily's perspective, like those relationships, particularly one with Patrine, was very like a mercenary. Like in Cecily's mind, it wasn't like they were friends in the same way that like even the Trash Trio was friends. It's like Patrine and I are two very ambitious people who, at this point in time, can use each other to achieve our goals and get ahead in like what we want with the courts. And Cecily was like a little bit like, well, okay, like you stopped being useful for me before I stopped being useful to you, and I got to cut you loose first. And like, I think in Cecily's mind, a lot of the dislike is like wounded pride and like a loss of control, and not like an actual personal betrayal. I don't know how like mutual that is on Patrine's side, but that's definitely how Cecily views it. Do you want to jump in, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Like I think Fedrian. So like that trio, I kind of like they're not like homogenous stance. Like Patrine definitely has that force of personality that she was kind of like the leader of that group. Fedrian is kind of more of a wild card. She's like quite reckless and daring. So she probably would have like her and Patrine would have like butted heads on some points, and I could see her, keeping in touch with Cecily just as a like, oh, like Patrine doesn't control me. I do what I want. Because she had kind of that arrogant vibe. And Sonara I have as kind of more, she also does what she wants, but in kind of a different way. Like she's very like chill. Like Sonara doesn't really care about much. She just kind of like does her thing. So I could see her being like, yeah, I'll get tea with Cecily. Why not? And then if like someone got mad about it, she'd be like, oh, well, I'll like on to the next thing. Like she's someone who like, if you're in front of her, she'll like be your best friend. And then once you leave, she can't remember your name. Like she's just kind of passing through life.
The parallel's so good. It's like Jenna, leader of group, Patrine, leader of group, Dier, total wild card, Fedrian, total wild card. Although the Sonara Lucius, not quite the same, but also like chill and just like apathetic in that way, right?
Yeah, well, and you can see though how they were shaped by these people.
Yeah.
So then Sesily, I guess Cecily Sylvain, what interactions or scenes did you have planned or want to have with Sylvain, since you and Ian were coming in with this pre-existing relationship?
I think she would have been like very sort of protective of Sylvain, very like trying to guide him to, what she thinks is the appropriate people to talk to and make connections to. I think that also ties a little bit back to like Sylvain's whole deal with his family. Like Cecily kind of falls into that trap a little bit of like, I know what's best for. I mean, and that's also kind of just Cecily's personality as a whole, but like a little bit of like, I know more than you do. I kind of know this is you're kind of new to the court. I'm gonna like maybe sort of subtly guide you to the people that I think you should be talking to and making connections with.
And who would be those people? Like who does Cecily want Sylvain to make connections with, and who are her contenders for a favorable match for him? Since
I would not be okay. So this obviously wouldn't have happened because Veronica would not be in if I had played. But I think in a world where both Veronica and I are there, she gloms on to Elion. As for like sure. This person would be a good match for Sylvain.
Yeah, like if one of the other players had to bow out and sure. Elian was in, but Cecily was still there.
Yes, I think Cecily would have been like Elian and Sylvain. They seem like they're friends. They, have. I think they would. I think Cecily would maybe like think that they. I think she obviously Mavis is like sort of the prize for like winning, but I think maybe Cecily doesn't think that. Yeah, I think maybe she doesn't think that Mavis and Sylvain are like actually a good match.
Yeah.
I think she probably recognizes, like, if they get married, Mavis will just, like, run circles around him and get her way constantly, and Sylvain will be a little bit unhappy with that.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Elion is like, oh, she's, like, from a respectable family, she's, like, personality is well matched, she kind of is, like, you know, has, like, the kindness that Sylvain needs. I think maybe that's where she goes.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And is there an NPC that you would have liked to have interacted with as Cecily?
I
Or NPCs?
I am still so curious how the Addison and Cecily interaction would have ended up playing out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Cecily Addison, because Addison, like of course, like Addison is a spoilers, um, is a persona, but I
Mhm.
think the persona of Addison has that kind of what's the is it Vanity Fair? Becky Sharp, the character Becky Sharp, is that Vanity Fair? No, Vanity. Anyway,
Mhm.
there's a character named Becky Sharp who is like a kind of come from nothing social climber.
Mhm.
Or like the Emma Stone character in the Favorite movie, with Olivia Colman. Uh, she's kind of got that social climber feel, which is kind of similar to Cecily, but like
Mhm.
Cecily, like even though she was from a different branch of the family and like kind of low down, she was still an Ilariel. So even
Yeah.
though like Petrine, Fedrian, and Sonara were like above her pay grade,
Mhm.
she was still kind of cut from that cloth. Whereas
Yeah.
like Addison is like a house from Farmost with like no one of note from it. So, and then also I think there might have been an element of Cecily like game recognizing game and
Mhm.
being like kind of sus of Addison from the beginning.
Well, because
Um,
okay, so a little behind the scenes, like I as a player, and I second guessed myself on this a lot, but I was like during recording, messaged you and was like, Addison is a ska in disguise. Like,
yeah,
Wow. Like
yeah,
session 0?
I
no,
think it's like after like 1 or 2. I think.
yeah.
I think probably
Oh,
2.
okay, I see. Yeah, when you were
Well,
getting the chat and our
Mhm.
thoughts as we were going, yeah.
and you blink and you miss it in the epilogue, but I did mention this in the short story, The Silence Between. Read that if you haven't read that already.
Go read. I think I didn't
Um,
make a community post. Sorry, Matt. I'll do that later.
yeah, no, that's fine. But Cecily had the secret, or did Cecily have the secret about Loris, or did she not have
That
that
was
one?
so that was the one Lucius gave me. That was the one Ben gave me in our secret
Right.
training.
So
But I
you
didn't
you
know
didn't
it.
have it originally, but
Yeah.
you would have had it going into the game. Um, so Cecily would have also been kind of uniquely positioned to be a little more
Mhm.
suspicious of Addison. Uh, yeah, I think Cecily Addison would have been really interesting.
I
Um,
hmm. I wonder actually if there's a world, and like I wonder if there's a world where once I start getting suspicious of Addison, I like push on Loris in kind of a parallel to the way Mavis did.
hmm like I was like that's the thing. Like I put a lot of NPCs in who were, potential sources of information. Like Faisal, the Terra Steward, knew a lot about the like interhouse politics,
Mhm.
and also the Ilarial family dynamics, which Cecily also knew. Like Cecily knew all the stuff about like Vasha and Felix not
Mhm.
getting along. She knew all the Allomancers in the family. She knew Cassian was Mistborn. Um, so yeah, no, it would have been a very different game.
Very different.
I also want to know, or just ask about. Someone asked what the secret is about Loris Quick. He was basically being blackmailed by Kelsier and
Mhm.
Mare, uh, to help them create the persona of Addison to like
Mhm.
lend it some legitimacy, because obviously Addison doesn't exist. Or maybe there is an Addison Tenebrian living off in Farmost. I don't know. But I think my headcanon is she doesn't exist. It's just a persona that Mare has created. And Loris is like, oh yeah, this is my cousin. And the players did point out to me after that you have this whole family tree and you're so specific about how everyone was related, but Addison is just a cousin. Yeah, I'm curious. Like, I did want to ask though, Grace, because you weren't watching the show, you weren't recording, but you were interrogating everyone for their secrets.
Yes.
And it also is interesting to me because the players all had very kind of personal in character goals, especially at the beginning. Like, it took them a while to kind of start focusing on the mystery. Like Sylvain was very focused on, he was focused on the mystery to some extent, but he was also very focused on protecting Mavis from Dier and developing his relationship with Addison. Eliane was trying to learn her seeking, and so she sought out Lucius initially. Jenna had her list of high-ranking people to talk to.
Jenna had so much
so it was interesting to me that your list was very like mystery fire focused, and that does match how you, the player, managed to put together a lot of things with just the secrets alone. So I was wondering if you wanted to talk about that a bit.
And I think we should talk about what secrets Cecily had in particular. I think that would be fun
Yes.
as well.
Yeah. As a start to this conversation, should I just bomb through Cecily's secrets quick?
Yeah, okay. Go for it.
I have them up. So,
and we're gonna post the full secret list to patrons, by the way. We'll definitely talk about them. But yeah,
I think that might be coming out today. Actually, the full secret list.
Today?
Yeah. So Sesily knew all the Ilarial Allomancers. So that's Petrine is a seeker, Dianette is a pewter arm, Vasha is a coin shot, Mavis is a lurcher. And that Solace and Felix, as far as Cecily knew, did not have powers.
Yeah, that's one that's funny to me because that's one that not everyone knew, but it's so fundamental to my understanding of all those characters that when people start speculating, like, oh, Mavis is a Mistborn, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, obviously not.
Yeah, no, Cecily knew. And then you knew that Vasha had a reputation towards cruelty towards the Ska, and that he would be the biggest opponent of Julian's proposal. You knew the family dynamics, as I said, and that Vasha specifically was trying to use his allomancy and the allomancy. I don't think I put this in your secret, but also the allomancy of his son to try to displace Felix at the time of the fire. Because at the time of the fire, like, Shan snapped the day of the fire.
Yes.
So leading up to the fire, and that's why Felix wasn't there. So Vasha was trying to use that kind of like, oh, my line, even though we're twins and Felix is older, my line is the one with the allomancy, so we should flip it. You knew Vasha was close with Straff, and you knew about Vasha and Dier's relationship, that Vasha was training Dier. You knew about the ministry helping with the reconstruction of the Ilarial estate.
Yes.
And you knew that the men in the Lunarsh family had problems with infertility historically. And that Esme, who was a Lunarsh, she was the brother or the sister of Lord Lunarsh and is Sylvain's mother. You knew that Esme was worried that because Olivine had a reputation, Julian's mother Olivine had a bad reputation, that between that and the Lunartian fertility, she was worried about kind of Julian's reputation, and that, you know, rumors might surround his parentage. And she had asked you to quash such rumors if they came up as a favor. So that was what Cecily was working. And then you also had a couple secrets from other players.
And I think
Mhm.
you gave Jenna the ministry one, Grace.
I
think?
did, yes.
Yeah,
I gave Jenna the ministry one because that made sense for Jenna to know through her connections with the
it
ministry.
It does. Yeah.
So yeah, why don't you walk through what you managed to figure out or what you remember figure out?
So, like I mean, I guess that the Burn Man was washed up pretty much right away. That he was the one who survived. It just made sense with, he already had allomancy plus his personality, was already known for like cruelty and stuff. That was pretty much like a no-brainer for me to be like, yeah, Vasha's the one who survived and is the Burn Man. Other than that, obviously I had like my suspicions about Addison.
As did we all. But we didn't do anything with them. But we were very suspicious.
Do you think Cecily would have been like, because Addison kind of was like playing them against each other a bit and kind of like diverting attention. Do you think Cecily would have like overcome that and stayed focused on Addison, or would she also have kind of gotten distracted potentially?
So I think the thing with Addison is that Cecily doesn't care. Like, she has her suspicions, but she doesn't care until she sees that Sylvain is interested in Addison. And I think at that point she's like, I need to deal with this. Like, this is not a good person for my nephew to be interested in. And so I think maybe that's a little bit of a distraction. I don't think she necessarily is like played against the other PCs, right? Like, she's just so much older, so much more experienced. She's like she knows that maybe they're involved. But I think Cecily is pretty much focused on like, these like any attempts to like play me against some of the other PCs is a distraction sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's such a different Addison Sylvain vibe if Cecily's there, though. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a question in the chat: as a matchmaker type character and as a secret seeker, do you think Cecily would have caught on to Jenna and Dier?
Though she's not a seeker, she's a smoker.
Smoker. Yeah.
The question says seeker, but Cecily is in fact a smoker.
Yes.
I was wondering. I think they meant secret seeker.
Oh, secret. Okay. Not Allomancer.
Like not an Allomancer.
Sorry.
That is confusing, though, in Mistborn. No, that's totally fair.
No. Elion is the secret seeker.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
Oh. I mean, well, I feel like it's sort of sometimes harder for me to separate, like, because we as players all knew.
Yeah, right.
So it's a little hard for me to be like, what would Cecily have picked up on?
And would that have been a mystery you as a player were interested in exploring, since you knew it already, and you knew, like, obviously Alex and Eric had a plan to reveal it to the audience. So yeah, that's where like kind of game choices come in, and yeah. But that I can see how that's a little tricky.
It makes me wonder if Alex and I had kept that relationship secret, how that would have differed, because that would have made things very different, I think, in particular with Sesily.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys revealed it to the players. Because I think like
adjustment.
Like going in, and I think I think if you guys, we would have had a conversation about it, but I think I might have really wanted to talk through that with you if you wanted to keep the relationship a secret.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about the smoker thing. Did you want to talk a bit about the thing with because you and Alex worked out some stuff about Dier and Renholm after you realized that Cecily was a smoker.
Yes. So in the mag rules, you can get a thing that lets you like block emotional allomancy with copper, which isn't how it works in the books. Absolutely but it's mag.
Yeah.
Well,
You
in
go
the
back-
books, you can block it for yourself.
Yeah, just
Oh.
yourself.
You can't extend that to other people.
Right.
That's the game mechanic extension.
So the game, you can get a stunt that lets you also shield others from emotional.
You
Yes.
need those things for game mechanics because Copper is kind of one-dimensional. So
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we don't know what a Copper Rust 7 can do. It's possible. Anyway, so we talked about at some points during one of, because Cecily was like in and out of Luthadel on like business trips and stuff throughout her life with the Hadriels. So we talked about during one of those trips, Cecily and Dier and Renholm had this like interaction where Cecily noticed Renholm using like emotional allomancy to like abuse Dier and used her copper to protect him. And like to like during that instant, like get him away from Renholm and try to like calm him down. And so there's a little bit of like Cecily like was one of the only adults in Dier's life to protect him, but also she left Luthadel not long after, and like even though she did protect him the once, Dier was still left with Renholm after that. And so there's a little bit of like resentment there of like, yes, you were one of the only adults in my life who like ever tried to like look out for me and protect me, but also like, you know, it was only once, and like then you just left me again. And so there's a lot of like resentment there.
Yeah, that would have been. I'm really happy with what Veronica did, and I loved what Eliane brought to the table. But
Dave Mavis's life.
Speaking of Mavis, we knew we wanted a smoker in the group, and I know in early conversations, Mavis was potentially going to be a smoker, and I was talking with Grace kind of, is Cecily, when you were thinking smoker, we were talking, is she a secret smoker? Like, would the other players know so they could rely on you? Because we did want a smoker in the mix who could be relied upon. But I'm really glad Mavis ended up being a lurcher, because I think that fits the character really well, and obviously it saved. Well, maybe I'm not glad, because it saved her life, and I wanted to kill her. But
you decided she was a lurcher much before the show.
But yeah, it was interesting kind of balancing and then I also added Verity as a smoker for Jenna, because we didn't think it would make sense for Cecily to smoke for Jenna, especially since Jenna's allomancy was a secret.
I think we talked a lot about that, Matt. I remember a lot.
Yeah. Well, so Cecily's, I said, was like public, and sort of my logic for that was like, well, Cecily's been around for a really long time, and like Patrine would have known, like eventually, like these people would have known who like married into other families, and like it would have sort of trickled out. So I decided like maybe I think what I said was like when she was younger, during her like days with the like mom group, when they were all sort of at court together, it would have been a secret. And at that point, she would have used it to like, for Patrine. But over time, it just made sense that like enough people who dislike Cecily would have found out that there's no point in keeping it a secret anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I imagine Sesily and like, I forget how this works. I think there's a way with copper and bronze, because Patrine is a seeker, that you can kind of like test for. How does that work?
Like dead
Maybe
zones?
I'm getting this wrong. I feel like you like by switching on and off the two, you can kind of try to figure.
Yeah, I think you can.
I don't have a note on this, but I think I had a headcanon that Patrine might have leaked Cecily's allomancy in
that was always sort of my headcanon as well, but I don't think we ever actually talked about it.
Yeah.
You know, she wouldn't let an advantage be unused.
Yeah,
she just wouldn't.
Yeah. In response to the chat, yes, Verity was a smoker. And if you review her conversation with Jenna, there's some very veiled comments about being at service and to kind of signal if you need me. And that's referring to if Jenna needs to burn pewter and she was in a group, she would signal Verity, and then Verity would start burning copper.
And even in episode 1, there's a copper cloud around Verity, which, when you know that, it's very obvious. Admittedly, the veiled comments in the Jenna Verity scene were so veiled that I was so in Jenna's head that I didn't know what you were talking about, even though we had already discussed it. So that's good.
Yeah, I think, I forget if it was Lucius or Eliane, but one of them detected the dead zone and rolled really high and was able to recognize that Verity was kind of the center of the dead zone. So
I begged Matt that I needed a smoker that's on Team Jenna and how to make that work. And so
and I was trying to deal with character bloat, so that's why I folded. I was like, okay, I'm already planning this ministry character to be there. Jenna's like aligned with the ministry. Can we make the smoker the obligator? Just so we're not creating a brand new faceless NPC just to be Jenna's smoker. We're getting close to time.
We can go Grace, a little over for sure.
Oh yeah, we can go a little over for sure. But I just wanted to make sure, Grace, if there's anything we've missed, that we make sure we get that in.
Or anything you want to talk about.
I mean, I can't think of anything in particular that, like, any big spot that we missed that I wanted to talk about now.
Oh, what was your relationship with Tennille? Well, Cecily and Tennille. Did they have a relationship?
I mean, actually, we didn't, like, talk about Tennille at all before the campaign. Like, they would have been friendly.
I could see Sesily kind of seeing Tennille as, like, I'm not sure Sesily would respect Tennille, because, like, Cecily's, like, kind of hyper competent. So she might see Tennille as a bit of a, like, liability. I don't know though.
That's just
maybe.
Really...
I mean, I can also see a world where Cecily is like, this person is like she wouldn't like let her guard down necessarily, but like this person is a peer who I can also maybe like have a little more fun with in a way that I really don't get to very often. I can also maybe see it going more in that direction.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, Cecily's relationship with the Ilariel siblings, because we established kind of with so like Solace kind of respected Sesily, especially, but he was not close with her when she was with Patrine, and was never close with her. But after, I think Sesily, after she prevented Patrine from displacing him in a coup, Solace was like, Cecily's good people. But the sibling Sesily was closest with was Cassian.
Cassian, my friend.
So yeah, do you want to talk about that relationship at all?
Yeah, so Cassian and Cecily were good friends. Cassian like was always sort of like the peacekeeper in the house and like very like outgoing, very friendly. Like Cecily sort of like was like very just immediately liked him a lot. And the two of them, I think it's somewhat like Cassian. We talked about like at first he sort of saw her as like an ally to like rein Patrine in, because that was sort of, even though he was the youngest, sort of what he had always done, like kept the peace in the family. And the two of them became close. We talked a little bit about like maybe like there was like they were always sort of like joking and like a little bit flirting with each other, but it never went like that far. And he was like the main one that she really kept in touch with once she like married Reese, and who was like her main contact with the family. I think actually when when I first told you, Eric, about like everything that happened with Patrine in the past, you were like, why would Cecily betray Patrine for Solace? And internally I'm like, no. Cecily was loyal to Dionette and was loyal to Cassian. Anything with like, in Cecily's mind, anything between Solace and Patrine is just like that's just like sibling rivalry fluff. Like I'll intervene in between those two in any way that Solace or in any way that Cassian and Dean think is necessary. But like, she was very much like all in on like Dionette and Cassian are like the brains of the family. They're the ones in charge. They're the ones I like. Like I am loyal to those two. That was where her like loyalty was.
Yeah. So like Dionette. Dionette wanted Solace to inherit, so Cecily wanted Solace to inherit. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about like Solace's capabilities compared to Patrine. It was about what Dionette wanted.
Look, Grace, anytime someone badmouths Techiel, Jenna or Patrine included, well, until Patrine betrayed me, I'm like, what? How could you? Are you kidding me? So I'm just in Techiel mode. How dare you? Mm-hmm. How could you?
Yeah.
And like maybe Cassian and Sesily, like they're both allomancers, that can be useful, potentially. Cecily as a smoker, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
And we talked like very briefly in character creation about the possibility of, were Cassian and Cecily ever romantic? Was there ever like a one-sided thing? And I think we strayed away from that. It was really important to you that Reese and Cecily was a love. Wait.
It was that was a political match. Like Reese and Cecily was a political match that like over time they grew like fond of each other, and like I would say they like by the time Reese died they loved each other, but they were never in love.
Yeah, it was a partnership, and they had a lot of mutual respect and affection for each other, but it wasn't like a sweeping love story. And yeah, I forget why we gravitated away from the Cecily Cassian thing, but I think we just liked it better with them. Kind of besties.
And then you did the Cassian Fedry and stuff, and it like didn't make sense after that.
And that was I came up with that much later. Like we had definitely already decided what Cecily and Cassian's relationship was at that point.
I think we'll talk about that on the next stream.
At least from Cecily,
we have to wait till next stream to talk more about Fedry.
I think at least from Cecily's side, there was maybe like a little bit of an attraction there. Like I said, like they were very like I think maybe Cassian was like the one person that Cecily was like a little more like fun and flirty with, and like kind of there was a different dynamic there versus like the Cecily that she was around other people. But yeah, it never would have went anywhere between them.
Yeah, no. When you couldn't make it, I don't think I was very in the zone and just like planning, but I think there's a world where if I had reflected a bit when you didn't make it, I might have looked at my extensive Ilarial family tree and wept a little bit, because I'm like, the person who knew the most about all this and who this is like relevant to isn't here.
You made it work.
I think we made it work, probably because I didn't dwell on it, because I honestly at the time I didn't even think of that. I just
got stuff to do,
rolled with it. Yeah, no, I had fun building Sesily with you, getting her involved in the secrets, and it's interesting what effect Sesily might have had on runtime, because on one hand, I do think Cecily would have speedrun the mystery and gotten some of that stuff out sooner. But because of her priorities, I also think there would have been like a lot of additional Cecily scenes that might have, added.
That are like disjointed from the other people. Maybe.
Well, to some extent, yeah. Like some of the paths she might have tread would have been additional paths which were not covered. So it probably still would have been at least 5 episodes. Let's be honest.
Matt, it was always going to be more than 2. I always said it.
Yeah.
We all knew it, except you.
Yeah. You know what? Patrons will have gotten my original outline with times, which is very, very laughable.
10-minute introductions per character, I think.
Yeah. I was like, listen, I don't know how time works. I don't know how long stuff takes.
Yeah. And I think that the logic to putting it to patrons is like it's some fun behind the scenes stuff, but also like some of the notes aren't necessarily canon and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
all the note stuff. Yeah, all the note stuff for me is possibilities. And I make decisions in the moment about kind of what's canon or what happens. So some of the stuff can be treated as like behind the scenes stuff that was happening that the players didn't get to. But other stuff just isn't. It just isn't canon because I went a different way.
Yeah. It's also like a lot, so,
Mm-hmm.
You can pay $1 a month if you want to see some behind the scenes or something, or just boost us on Discord. That works too. So
yeah, for sure. But anyway, I think I do need a break before we do the mainstream,
which will be long. I think it will be long.
Yeah. So maybe we'll in any final words, Grace? This is your moment.
Not really. I'm actually. This is like a whole other subject, but I feel like I've been thinking a lot recently about how like young Cecily would fit in with this group as opposed to the prior generation, and I feel like that's a really interesting dynamic. But I feel like we maybe.
Well, if you want to say a bit about that, as a closing note, go ahead.
Fascinating.
Yeah. If Cecily was, in her mid to late 20s, or her 20s, I guess, because Eliane is early 20s. So, where would she fit in this group? Who would she be aligned with? She was Sylvain's cousin.
Yeah. I mean, so I obviously like Addison is already a character, but I really think like primarily the one that makes most sense is like Mavis for her to be interested in and like trying to foster and that's maybe like an interesting type of like, well, Mason already has Addison, but like Cecily kind of wants to be Mavis, like wants to like prove that she's the better version of Addison for Mavis.
Wow. I love that.
Man. You could do so many like sorry, when I said cousin, it just popped into my head. What if Sesily was Julian's sister?
Whoa.
Also,
the thing is, like, I think there is a very good chance that if Cecily ends up attached to Jenna just straight up murders her at some point. Like Jenna would not do the Patrine thing of just like sort of quietly like seething in the back. Like Jenna would just straight up murder Cecily if Cecily betrayed Jenna.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I can guarantee that like yes, or maybe not directly murder if she couldn't manage it, but it wouldn't be her first choice. Okay.
Yeah.
Poison's dull.
Yeah. No, but that would be interesting because then you have the kind of you're trying to get something out of Mavis. You have a rivalry with Addison. And if there's a familial relationship with Sylvain, you're maybe still kind of trying to get Sylvain a match. Like that element could still work.
Or Sylvain's like big brother to young Cecily, that could be fun too. Or big cousin, like have the brother sister vibes. That could be fun.
Yeah, I thought there'd be all kinds of ways to.
Oh my goodness.
And then what would young? Because Sesily kind of looks at like Lucius and Dier as kind of like kids who need to like shape up. She kind of has that motherly thing. If she was their age, how would she view Lucius and Dier?
I think she would find Lucius like interesting / useful. I think that could be like a really interesting dynamic there of like in this is the world where like Lucius has the higher social status and is older and is like would definitely look down on her, but like I think almost Lucius is like an interesting challenge to Cecily of like he's got this whole like gossip network and I can use him, but I know he doesn't like look at me as like I know he looks down on me.
Lower house, of course.
I think I know the answer to this because I think we've talked about it a little behind the scenes. If Sesily was their age, would there be any Sesily ships, or would she not have time for that romance?
Oh, I think any Cecily ships are very mercenary on her end of like this is
advantageous.
I want to marry you because you can like you are the most useful person for me to marry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Well, shall we break?
Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this stream pre-show. It's going to be a bit of a marathon today.
I literally blocked off all of today, Matt. I don't know about you.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining us. This has been Diceborn, Secrets in Stained Glass, Reveals in Stained Glass, pre-show.
I don't know if we're calling it. Reveals in Stained Glass was the talkback. This isn't Reveals in Stained Glass.
Whatever we call it. We're professionals.
Talk about this.
We rolled a nat 20 with this. It was perfect. Start to finish from the first moment.
I'm so glad we could get Grace on to talk because that was definitely a goal of mine, and I know it's weird having two streams, but you know what, this is fine. We can just dig into Sesily, and
I think it worked good, and it was just we put a lot of work into that character, obviously. Absolutely. And she was really fun. Oh, one parting note, Grace.
Yes.
Can you tell them your ideas for Cecily's art, what that would have been? Because I think that's funny.
So Cecily, I have no idea about like actual Final Empire fashion, but like I always sort of like had like old Hollywood as like my vibe, like old Hollywood all grown up as like my mental like vibe for Cecily in terms of like aesthetics. Yes. So like Cecily is like I think dark hair, like very like large bushy eyebrows that are like almost a unibrow, sort of like smoking a cigar, very like poised, very elegant.
Or like
a cigar would have been so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we commissioned that anyway. What if we did that?
Yeah, at some point, if there's any fan artists who want to do a Sesily fan art, but maybe eventually we'll do a commission because.
Look, our character artist seems to be having a lot of fun just continually watching.
Yeah, or if anyone wants to commission Ellie, because Ellie's gotten a couple Secrets in Stained Glass commissions from people.
I might show them on stream. I'll cover our faces and just show off some of the art.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, so I'll show you guys because it's incredible. Anyway. We should break, and because we probably have like 4 more hours ahead of us.
Yeah, we'll be back in 15 minutes with most. We'll see who's here. It's going to be kind of informal pop on, pop off, but most of the cast for sure.
Yeah, hopefully Alex can come. So anyway, so we will see you in a bit. Okay.